Welcome to Gavin Fun Facts, where the world's strangest truths come to light. Ready to learn something unbelievable?
The sea has always had a gentle yet mysterious way of calling anyone willing to listen. When night falls and the world fades into silence, the surface of the water turns into a dark sheet that moves slowly, like the long breath of a resting planet. In the distance, the waves whisper, not loud, not demanding, just a soft greeting inviting us to look deeper. Behind that silence lies a realm almost untouched, a place where time moves with a different rhythm, calm and eternal. This is where our story begins, not on a white sandy beach, nor on the busy surface of the sea filled with ships and seagulls, but far below, at depths that have never once seen sunlight, in a world scientists called the Midnight Zone, the eternal middle-of-the-night realm. But before diving there, we must move through the layers of the ocean slowly, like someone descending steps into a room that grows darker, yet more peaceful. Imagine you're on a small boat. The night is incredibly calm. The wind brushes your skin with gentle movements, like a soft hand that doesn't want to startle anyone. The water glimmers under the moonlight, shifting slowly like dark blue ink. Every sound feels distant, the fading hum of the boat's engine, the faint calls of nocturnal birds. Only one sound remains consistent, the rhythmic rustle of waves touching the hull, like a soft tapping that makes you feel sleepier. When you look down into the dark water, a strange feeling rises. Not fear, but a deep, settling calm. The sea at night seems to hold the ability to absorb all worries, all burdens of the mind, and replace them with vast, soothing silence. The ocean seems to say, "Here you can rest. Here, time chases no one." The boat slowly stops, and you prepare your diving gear, not for an adrenaline-filled expedition, but for a quiet journey into peaceful depths. When your feet touch the surface of the water, the sensation is different. Cold yet comforting, dark yet embracing, strange yet familiar. The sounds of the world above vanish instantly, replaced by the dense stillness only the ocean possesses. You begin to descend. At a few meters deep, moonlight still slips through gently. The dark blue turns into deep green, then slowly into a calming shade of blue. Small fish move around you, swimming in slow, dreamy patterns as if they too are asleep. Nothing is in a hurry here. Everything moves as if the sea is rocking the world in a long, soothing lullaby. As you descend further, the sea creatures begin to change. Their colors become pale, their movements slower, their bodies either narrower or wider than those of fish near the surface. You see jellyfish drifting like little floating lanterns, glowing with soft bioluminescent light. They move like thin cloth flowing with the currents, never seeming rushed or threatened. Some glow a soft blue, others a faint red, and some flicker gently like distant stars. The deeper you go, the dimmer the light becomes. At 1,000 meters, sunlight can no longer reach at all. But strangely, you do not feel afraid. This dense silence feels like being in a vast sleeping chamber, where all life moves in slow, harmonious rhythms. Every creature seems to follow an unwritten rule: move slowly and let time flow however it wishes. Here you see large creatures, yet they move with remarkable gentleness. A sperm whale gliding by like a peaceful giant shadow. A black, long-bodied dragonfish flickering faintly at certain points. Even strange beings like ghostfish that appeared transparent, as if made of mist. The most striking thing about the deep sea is not the strange shapes, but the absolute calm. No cries, no sudden movements, no great impacts. Everything proceeds slowly, as if time has paused, leaving room only for life to dream. And at the deepest point of your journey, something becomes clear. that the deep ocean is not a place of darkness, but a place that offers space for the mind to stop running. Here, every second feels long, soft, and full of peace. The world on the surface may be noisy and chaotic, but at the bottom of the sea, life flows like a never-ending lullaby. Chapter 1 ends with you floating still in that gentle darkness, listening to the whispers of the sea that never sleeps. It does not call you to explore further, nor does it push you away. The ocean simply exists, silent, vast, and full of soothing tranquility. And as you close your eyes, you realize you were not only diving into the ocean, you were diving into the silence within yourself. In the depths that have never been touched by light, far beneath the waves that appear calm from the surface, the ocean holds a world that feels detached from time. If Chapter 1 brought you to hear the gentle breath of the sea at night, then Chapter 2 invites you to dive into its deepest part, where Earth keeps the secret archives of its long journey. This place is not only dark, but silent in a way that is difficult for human ears to imagine. As you enter that dark zone, any sound coming from the human world disappears one by one, like layers of dreams fading away. What remains is only the faint pulse of the deep-sea currents, moving like the hands of a giant clock, regulating the rhythm of life on Earth for millions of years. At the bottom of the ocean, an endless expanse of fine sand forms a silent landscape rarely touched by sunlight. The sand is not just tiny grains. It is the result of the long journey of ancient mountains eroded by wind, continents that cracked and collided, and tiny creatures that once lived and died unnoticed by anyone. Each grain is a small record of this planet's history. The slow yet steady deep currents carry those fine particles like ancient snow that falls eternally. Their movement is so gentle, as if the ocean does not want to disturb the long sleep of the creatures lying beneath them. Among those particles are hidden microfossils, invisible to the naked eye, tiny skeletons of animal life, shells of microscopic organisms, small fragments of life long gone. If we look closer, among the calm sediments, we see petrified skeletons of ancient fish, shells of mollusks that have turned into minerals, and even marks resembling lines once carved by sea worms millions of years ago. All of them are frozen in silence, waiting for someone to understand their quiet language. In even deeper regions, the seafloor changes shape. From silent plains, we move toward giant valleys that can only be compared to the formations on the surface of another planet. Deep-sea trenches rise like giant scars on the Earth's skin, stretching thousands of kilometers and deeper than the highest mountain on land. Here, water pressure is so immense that a human body would collapse in seconds. Yet, strangely, life still exists. Mysterious creatures live in total darkness. There are glowing jellyfish floating like small lost lanterns. There are fish without eyes, relying solely on water vibrations to move. There are worm-like creatures living in the hot water emerging from hydrothermal vents, holes on the ocean floor, spewing water hundreds of degrees hot, yet rich with minerals that support life. Those hydrothermal vents are like giant chimneys standing in the darkness. Around them, hundreds of species of strange creatures live without relying on sunlight. It is here that scientists believe life on Earth may have first emerged, not on the surface, not under the sun, but in total darkness, surrounded by boiling water and immense pressure. We move further into the ocean's story. Thick sediments along the seafloor store memories of ancient climate changes. In those layers are recorded moments when the Earth experienced extreme warming, when ice covered almost the entire planet, and when life nearly vanished due to global catastrophes. All that information is hidden, like chapters of an unopened book, waiting for scientists to read the planet's long history. But it is not only records of history that lie here. The seafloor is also where continents meet and part. Oceanic crust constantly moves, slowly but surely, like a long breath following the Earth's rhythm. Tectonic plates shift closer or farther apart, creating towering underwater mountains or deep valleys. What we see on the surface is only a small part of the geological dance happening beneath us. Sometimes, underwater volcanoes erupt with tremendous force. Though invisible to humans, those explosions create new islands, reshape coastlines, and prepare land for future life. Every eruption is a new chapter in our planet's evolution. In some places, we find ancient coral reefs that have died. Their calcium carbonate structures still stand strong, even though their colors have faded. They were underwater forests that housed millions of species for millions of years before eventually sinking, eroding, or being buried by natural changes. But their remnants still tell a story, as if whispering that life was once majestic here. If you listen with a calm heart, the sound of the seafloor sometimes feels like a distant whisper, not a sound heard by ears, but a sensation, as if something wants to tell a story. And indeed it does. The ocean wants us to know that it never forgets. It remembers when the meteor fell and wiped out much of life. It remembers when the first lands emerged. It remembers when humans first walked along its shores. The ocean is a silent witness that records everything. And on this bedtime night, while the surface world is busy with daily life, the seafloor gazes at us from its darkness. It seems to say, "Be at ease. Your journey is only a moment compared to my age. I have seen everything pass and return again." In that depth, time feels unhurried. There is no anxiety, no chaos, only the eternal journey of tiny particles falling slowly like gentle rain that has never stopped since this planet was born. On this quiet night, let us once again dive into the long story of the Earth, not from the land, not from the deepest ocean, but from a place far beneath them both. A place we never see directly, yet we feel its influence every single day. That place is the Earth's interior, a dark realm filled with heat, pressure, and forces that have silently shaped the face of the world for billions of years. If the previous chapter taught us to explore the emptiness of the seafloor, then this chapter invites us to go even deeper, to the place where mountains are born, Earth's plates move, and continents are slowly arranged like pieces of a giant puzzle that is never complete. In that depth, the Earth never truly sleeps. The eternal burning heart. Imagine walking through a corridor with no end. The deeper you go, the warmer the air that wraps your skin. Slowly, that warmth turns into unseen waves that make it hard for you to breathe. That is a simple image of Earth's mantle, a layer nearly 3,000 kilometers thick that moves like an ocean of molten rock. Inside the mantle, the rock is not fully liquid. It is thick, like hot honey moving extremely slowly. Yet those tiny movements, over millions of years, can create forces that push continents upward and downward. And from those gentle motions, mountains are born. When continents collided under ancient skies. Millions of years before humans existed, the Earth had a very different face. The continents were not separated as they are now. They were giant pieces floating above the mantle, constantly moving with the flow of heat from beneath the surface. Sometimes they moved closer, sometimes farther apart. Sometimes they pressed gently, sometimes they collided with unimaginable power. From those collisions, mountains were formed. Imagine two large wooden blocks being pushed together from both directions. When they meet, their surfaces rise. The same happens when two continents collide. Hard, cold rocks are pushed upward, forming folds, fractures, and eventually towering mountain ranges. This is how the Himalayas were formed. This is how the Andes stand tall. And this is how ancient mountains, now eroded by time, first appeared in the world. If you stand on a mountain peak today, wherever it may be, know that you are standing on one of Earth's old scars, a very ancient wound that has become the most magnificent view humans have ever known. Volcanoes, the hot breath of the planet's heart. Not all mountains are formed by the collision of continents. Some are born from pressure trying to escape from beneath the surface, seeking cracks, seeking a way home to the air. When that pressure finally finds a way out, a volcano is born. Earth has hundreds of active, dormant, and extinct volcanoes. They are like ancient giants that occasionally wake up and breathe hot air into the sky. A volcanic eruption may look terrifying. Boiling craters, hot ash, red lava flowing like rivers of fire. But without those eruptions, Earth would never have the air we breathe today. Yes, the Earth's first atmosphere was born from volcanoes. The smoke that released water vapor, carbon dioxide, and other gases became the foundation for the atmosphere that later became home to clouds, rain, and life. Each eruption releases new minerals, fertile soil, and small islands that slowly grow into land. From this process, continents gradually change. Even more beautiful, some of the world's most exotic islands, like Hawaii and Iceland, were formed by underwater volcanoes that continuously spewed lava until it reached the surface. Volcanoes are not only destroyers, they are creators. When the Earth breathes, great quakes that reshape the world. If volcanoes are the Earth's hot breath, then earthquakes are its pulse. Beneath our feet, Earth's plates are always moving. No part of the surface is ever truly still. Sometimes the plates get stuck against one another, holding energy for hundreds of years. And when that energy is finally released, the world shakes. An earthquake is not just a small crack. Some ancient quakes were powerful enough to change river paths, sink plains, and even create new lakes. Imagine the Earth as a giant being occasionally stretching its muscles. The vibrations may be frightening, but without them, the world would stagnate. Continents wouldn't drift, mountains wouldn't rise, and life would not evolve as it has. Twilight over a newly formed continent. After millions of years, the continents slowly took shape. Some broke away from large land masses, some joined again. New islands emerged from the ocean floor, while old mountains eroded into valleys. Imagine an ancient evening, the sun setting behind a newly formed range of mountains that had no name yet. The land was silent, with no tall trees, no walking animals, but the ground felt warm, as if it still held traces of heat from its depths. The land was empty, but not dead. It was waiting for something, waiting for its first inhabitants, who would one day come from the sea. Before that could happen, the Earth had to finish its work, arranging the map, shaping the mountains, drawing the coastlines, and igniting the deep sea fires. The Earth was preparing a home for every living creature that would one day arrive. The Earth's surface slowly changed. After the oceans formed and the first mountains stood as silent architects of the ancient era, the planet entered a new chapter in its long journey. Beneath the waters that seemed gentle from afar, the ancient oceans held stories far wilder than what could be seen. If mountains were the planet's backbone, then the oceans were its heart, pulsing, moving, and reshaping the world in unseen ways. At this time, Earth's atmosphere was still thick with mineral fog and volcanic dust. The sunlight reaching the surface was only half as bright as it is today, blocked by particles floating freely in the air. Yet far beneath the water's surface, something far more important was happening. The oceans were becoming a giant laboratory for chemical reactions that slowly led to life. The swirling salt water, heat currents from the ocean floor, minerals, and the planet's restless rhythm created an unexpected harmony. The ocean's temperature was not uniform. There were regions as warm as boiling water, heated by underwater volcanoes that spewed sulfur gas and minerals into the sea. In other places, the ocean surface cooled from ancient winds blowing down from newly forming mountains that were beginning to freeze. This temperature contrast created massive currents, streams of energy that carried minerals from one point to another, stirring the elements that would eventually form the foundation of life. On the seafloor, tireless volcanoes erupted spirals of lava that instantly hardened when touching water, forming giant chimneys. From these chimneys emerged a phenomenon unseen by modern human eyes except through recordings: hydrothermal vents, wells of mineral-rich hot water where signs of the first life began to appear. When the hot water rich in iron, nickel, and sulfur met the cold seawater, it formed pipe-like structures resembling small buildings in a city living in eternal silence. Around these black chimneys, simple life began its struggle to survive. Not life like fish, plants, or large organisms, but the simplest form of something living, microorganisms capable of transforming chemical energy into life. They were the guardians of the ancient ocean, the first generation of living beings that would become the beginning of the entire evolutionary chain. They did not need sunlight, oxygen, or anything familiar to modern organisms. They only needed heat and minerals, something that seems impossible for life today. Among the gas bubbles rising from the vents, these microbes formed large colonies, hanging like thin threads of new life. Although fragile, they survived harsh conditions, temperatures reaching 350 degrees Celsius, water pressure strong enough to crush a modern ship, and seawater filled with substances lethal to humans. But for them, this was home. This was where a new world began. Ocean currents carried minerals from the depths to the surface, creating unique patterns that influenced Earth's climate and stability. Massive waves carried traces of minerals toward the first forming shores. These early shores were not smooth, sandy beaches like today, but piles of black, rough rocks, untouched by erosion. Each wave that broke against the rocks brought particles of life, embedding them into new places, giving opportunities for more complex growth. Huge storms were common at that time. An atmosphere filled with electricity and heat triggered lightning that struck the ocean's surface thousands of times in a single night. Each strike was not a threat, but a spark of energy that accelerated chemical processes. Some modern scientists even believe that the first terrestrial life may have formed from a combination of energy from lightning, heat from ocean vents, and minerals from ancient mountains collapsing into the sea. In the darkness of the ancient ocean, simple forms slowly began to develop. Some found ways to capture energy more efficiently, lengthen their bodies, strengthen their cell walls, or replicate more quickly. evolution began with the smallest, simplest, yet most crucial thing: change. Change that occurred so slowly it was impossible to witness in a single lifetime, yet ultimately shaped the entire world. Over time, the oceans became a place with millions of colonies of living, dying, and interacting microorganisms. They produced new gases, opened and closed chemical pathways, and gradually altered Earth's atmosphere. From these tiny organisms, oxygen began to be released. Not much, just a little. But little by little, the oxygen accumulated, reacted with minerals on the ocean floor, and gave a red hue to ironstones now found as evidence of early life. The mountains formed in Chapter 3 began sending minerals from their peaks to the sea. Ancient acidic rain eroded the rock surfaces, carrying essential elements back to the ocean, feeding the microbes that flourished there. This cycle became the planet's symphony: mountains feeding the sea feeding life, and life slowly altering the atmosphere, preparing the world for the next step in evolution. Over the next hundreds of millions of years, these microorganisms would become the ancestors of all other creatures: more complex single-celled organisms, then multicellular beings, then primitive algae that would one day transform Earth forever. But at this stage, life had only just begun, still fragile, still small, yet full of possibility. This chapter affirms that though it appeared silent and empty, the ancient ocean was the center of early life. In its darkness, life built the world's foundation, and from these depths, the long journey toward all forms of life, including humans, would begin. Night slowly returned over the ancient world, a night that was never truly dark because its sky was filled with volcanic dust, the red glow of magma, and lightning striking in the distance. But after millions of years passed, something began to change. The world that once consisted only of storms, boiling oceans, and black rocks slowly started to arrange itself. This was the era when life, which had previously hidden in the darkness of the deepest oceans, began to look upward. An era when the young world tried to breathe. The beginning when light started entering the world. After millions of years relying on geothermal heat, the ancient microbes living in hydrothermal vents slowly began to learn something new, something that would change Earth's face forever. Some of them began to use the faint light that filtered through the shallow ocean surface. The light was weak, filtered by the still heavy ancient atmosphere, but enough to trigger the first reactions towards simple photosynthesis. This event was a great revolution, though in a very small form. There was no loud sound, no explosion, only a tiny microbe that for the first time captured sunlight and turned it into energy. And from this moment, the long journey toward oxygen-rich air began. When the first oxygen was born, at this time, the vast ocean suddenly became a canvas for a great transformation. Photosynthetic microbes produced tiny oxygen bubbles that slowly escaped from their bodies. In the short term, nothing happened. The oxygen quickly reacted with the abundant iron minerals in the ancient ocean. But year after year, century after century, the oxygen was produced without stopping. No one regulated them, no one watched, no one pushed. They just lived, reproduced, and produced oxygen, like a prayer that never ceased. And at one point, after millions of years of tireless work, the oxygen began to fill the sea. Oxidized iron minerals slowly sank to the seafloor, forming red layers now known as banded iron formations, eternal records of the first life that changed the world. The atmosphere began to respond. Toxic gases like methane and ammonia slowly decreased. The ancient sky began to turn bluish, though only slightly. The world that once lived in a thick haze gradually became clearer. It was not a fast change. It was a change that moved in sync with time itself, silent, gentle, unseen, but certain. Shallow seas became gardens of the young world. As oxygen increased in tropical and shallow ocean regions, life found ways to explore new areas. Microbes formed large colonies like living carpets, now known as stromatolites. They grew layer by layer, adding new structures little by little each day. Stromatolites did not move, did not make sound, had no eyes, yet they built vast gardens along the ancient shorelines, gardens that would one day become the learning grounds for more complex life. Between their colonies, the ocean became increasingly clear. Sunlight entered deeper than before. Green algae appeared as a new form of life that used light to grow faster. If we could stand on the edge of these ancient shores, though impossible for modern humans, we would see seas filled with greenish light, water surfaces shimmering and reflecting the young sky, and the white gleam of minerals constantly reacting with oxygen. It was not a friendly world, but it was a world preparing to become beautiful. A new atmosphere, a new sky, a new world. As oxygen increased, Earth's atmosphere began to change more rapidly. The ozone layer slowly formed, providing protection from the sun's deadly radiation. With this protection, the land surface, previously sterile and lethal, finally had the chance to become a place where life could grow in the future. Under this new sky, the ancient mountains that were once dark now appeared clearer, their peaks glowing red at sunset, their valleys filled with thin mist, and their vast rock deserts slowly being struck by rain more often. Earth began to feel like a planet awakening from a long sleep. And when the first life was dragged toward the light, after the world stabilized for a long time, some microbes living in the depths began to follow the ocean currents rising to the surface. Many died under sunlight and oxygen, which were still dangerous for them, but a small number survived. And those who survived slowly adapted. They formed new colonies, began new variations, and created more diverse metabolisms. Near the surface, life became the greatest evolutionary experiment ever. Every current, every wave, and every flash of sunlight changed them little by little. This was the first step of life toward the bright world, toward the Earth's surface they had only sensed through heat energy flowing from the ocean floor. The journey was long, difficult, filled with death. Yet it continued. Because that was how life worked in the ancient world. There was no choice but to move forward. The moment the world laughed for the first time. Around 1 billion years after Earth formed, a completely different scene stretched across the planet. For the first time, the world was not only living, but also felt alive. The oceans glowed blue-green. Stromatolites created shallow plains like underwater gardens. Oxygen filled most of the tropical atmosphere. The sky became bluer than ever before. The young Earth seemed to take a deep breath and began to laugh for the first time. And this is where our story tonight stops. Not because the story ends, but because we have just arrived at the true beginning of the modern world. After this era of microbes and ancient oceans, more complex organisms would appear. Cells with nuclei, giant algae, the first animals, the first plants, and eventually land life. All of that would come later, all of it born from the small miracle hidden deep in the ocean. Earth was not formed in a single day, and life did not come from outer magic. All of this was born from the patience of the universe and from the persistence of little microbes trying to catch the first light.